Test, test. 1, 2. We're here.
We are here.
And my microphone's working. I can see it, and yours
Mine's
is
working
too. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Looks like there's just one of you right now. I'm gonna guess Marlene. Maybe.
You don't need to tell people that number because then if they come in later,
Yeah.
you want to be like, oh, there's 1,000 people in here watching.
Well, here's another. It always starts off a little slow attendance until we get rolling. Happy holidays, happy December. Again, it's like going by so fast. I think we're down to like 12 days till Christmas. So hopefully everybody's got all their stuff done. I've got most of my shopping done. I just have to do some baking next week because baking is one of the things that we like to do. Well, Greta and I, my daughter and I like to do. Hi, Marlene.
You were
so
right.
So let's go ahead, Paul, and zoom in on our project, and I'll talk about the colors.
We had cords hanging down. Hey, look, I got a new fun transition tonight.
Let's see what that is.
Whoa. Almost kind of looked like one of those drones in New Jersey.
Sure. Okay. So this is a whimsical, fun painting. I love to do whimsical. You guys know that, especially around the holidays. I leave all the classical landscapes to Paul, and we'll show you what he's doing next week on the 20th. So we're using the basic colors. We're going back old style to black, white, blue, red, and yellow. So just the primary colors plus black and white. And this one comes together fun. It is a restyle of one that I designed for our Gogh studio years ago. And Jen Welton, who's always great with sending suggestions, found a picture of it and sent it to me and said, hey, what about this one? So thank you, Jen. We are happy to do this. So we're going to start with the background. I'm going to move this out of the way, but I will reference it from time to time. Actually, Paul, that reminds me of something I thought about and I forgot to tell you. I think it would be really cool if we can work it out sometime and have a picture-in-picture thing where we show the final picture up in the corner.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about that.
While everybody works, so people like popping in just to see what we're doing know what we're working towards.
Yeah.
So, all right, little finger stretch. I've been painting all day. It was fun. I loved it. Let's pick up.
Let's be honest. You were testing to see if it was going to do that weird autofocus thing.
I was not. Let us know if you see any weird camera focus issues. We have it set on autofocus now, and I know one time before it was pulsing, and we didn't really notice it at first. So just let us know. Colors. Colors we already talked about, but brushes. Just our handful of 4 different brush sizes, whatever you've got at home. I like to have a nice big flat brush to get the background in. This is a 3/4 inch brush. I'd love to have a 1 inch brush or bigger, but we're gonna go with this one. So go ahead and dip it in your water cup. Hopefully you have a water cup and a paper towel or paint rag. Dry it off. All right. So first we're going to mix white and blue, and we're gonna come up with this background color, and I actually mixed a little red in there too, just to change it up.
You borrowed a page from my book.
You can't claim credit for that. So yeah, you can make the background a little different than just regular old blue and white. I have a little purple up here where I just brushed red in on top. But let's mix the color first. Scrape off some white, scrape off some blue, mix them together. I wanted this to be a night scene. You can see it's got the moon on there. And so I made it kind of darker. Another color you could add to this blue would be black, and I've done that before with this exact painting, the old one I did. I mix some red in there, and you can see it really tones it nicely. Just watch it. You can turn to purple real quick, unless you want to do purple. There's no shame in doing a purple sky. But I do like the way that tones that. And I'll probably have to remix color over and over and over. Let's go ahead and start at the top. Your brush strokes can go all over the place. I purposely made it look like it had some sort of hazy thin clouds. Like if we didn't want a thick cloud base because we have the moon out, and that wouldn't work. Wouldn't make sense at all. So
the moon comes out when it's cloudy.
Yeah, but not if you do the whole sky
Actually,
cloudy.
I feel really saying that the moon comes out is kind of
What are you, a child? I picked up a little red, and this is what it looks like if you brush this across the top. almost like a vignette, you know, like we did around the Nutcracker painting. The more I go back and forth and side to side in whatever direction, the more that's going to blend in. So you can have a darker area on the top if you want. But just add a little at a time. And it also will depend on what kind of red you have. When I worked on this one I showed you, the original for this tutorial, I had a different red at home, and it was kind of more of an orange-based red. It worked out, but it was slightly different, so I expect
And
this
that's
one
all
will be
fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it being different.
Now, one thing you can do to create the wispies is you can dip your brush, the tip of the bristles, in some white. You can see I picked up very little.
Is this a new children's cartoon we're working on? The Wispy.
Yeah, trademark. So you can make it look like there's little thin, hazy clouds. And actually, I'll let you talk in a second, Paul. Chatty Cathy. While this is still wet, I do want to paint a nice bit of white. Not a huge amount, but just a little bit where the moon's going to go, because it would cast some light out around it. Technically, probably a lot more than I have, but I also want these swirls that I put in later to show up. And if you have too much bright white around where the moon goes, then that one that goes around the moon won't show up as well. So just a little, super subtle. We're going to come down to about here. So about 2/3 of the canvas will be covered. Actually, yeah, about 2/3. Okay, you can talk. Actually, that reminds me. I found a shirt for you on Etsy. I thought about buying it. It was so funny. I was like, this could go for Paul, definitely. It was you can buy a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, and it said professional yapper. Don't you think you need that?
You have just
Greta too. Greta.
You have just lost me in terms of me being interested in saying anything more this evening.
So offensive. Okay, go ahead. You can yap whatever it was you wanted to say.
Max Miller last night. We were watching Max Miller on YouTube. You guys, if you haven't watched him, you should.
Yeah, it's called Tasting History with Max Miller, and he cooks up historical recipes and gives you a history lesson too.
He'll find like the oldest known recipe of something. So last night he was doing brownies.
Mm-hmm.
And doing in his research, he discovered that brownies were not named for their color.
Interesting.
At the time that brownies came out, nor were they named for chocolate, because actually the original brownies didn't necessarily have chocolate. But around the time that brownies were first came about, there were books that were written by a Canadian author about little elves called brownies.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the funny thing. They lived in people's houses, and they did good chores and bad chores. They kind of just did their own thing. And the only way that they could leave the house is if they were given a piece of clothing.
Oh, like, okay, so J.K. Rowling borrowed that.
Totally.
Real quick, I'm going to...
that's all I've got.
Well, this is still wet. I'm going to dip the brush in white and pick up a decent amount of white. This bottom area, we want to be blue still, but lighter blue, because this is going to be the snow. And I did kind of a faded out horizon on this. I don't have a sharp horizon. You can see that, yeah, you can see the edge of a little hill here, but the horizon kind of just fades out there. I happen to like that look. If you want an actual horizon, it's not going to make the painting wrong or bad or anything like that.
You ruined it!
It was just my thing I decided to do with this.
I do that a lot.
The brownies are, I think they're in willow. I think those two little guys that go with
those guys are called brownies too, but those are also from... They have some European folklore to them too, apparently, but this guy had written, like, it was an illustrated book that had drawings of them. And they were extremely popular at that time. It was like the 1840s or something like that.
Huh. So I am also just mixing the light blue on the palette here too, so that, because once you get down a little bit, it's going to become pure white, and we don't want that. This area down here should technically be darker, because it would be in the shadow. I knew you were going to do that. Man, I know you so well.
In the shadow, da-da-da-da-do. Sorry, guys. I just had to do it.
So yeah, this little strip down here at the bottom can be darker. You can add blue right on there and just blend it in with that color. You could add a tiny bit of red.
Hey guys, we added something new to our website. A couple of things, actually.
What did we add, Paul?
We have kits available for Christmas.
Yeah, and they have to ship next week.
Yeah, so if you guys are going to order a kit for somebody, get on it. We're kind of limited availability on those as well.
Yeah, it was one of those things where we really should have got on it back in like September, maybe even August. But it was like an idea that popped up a little too late. Hey, why don't we do this?
We talked about it when we were at the beach. But,
yeah, but that was in November.
Yeah. But then the other thing is on the front page I added an ideas form. So if you've got an idea of something you'd like to see us paint, you can submit that via that. And then you also have the option of saying, hey, this is something I'd like to see as a tutorial.
Yeah.
Or is this something I would just like to watch the process?
Yeah.
And in that process aspect, it says gallery ready / portfolio. So that would be a completely different process necessarily than in our tutorials.
It would not be a teaching video. It'd be a watch me get this painting ready.
Right.
But we'd probably voice over some.
Oh yeah, we
I'm
would
doing
talk,
this
we
right
would talk
here.
about the process and everything, but it would be less about the instruction and more about just explaining the process, which is two different things, really.
Okay, so before we start laying out the big swirls, I do want to get some bright white snow down here, just on this side, and then you can kind of let it fade out over here. This is still really wet, so it's not going to adhere super great, so it might be something we have to go back to. But I want to load up the side of the brush with a little white. Just tap it right in the white. You can see how I picked up just a little bit right on the edge. And I just sort of scrape it in. And I'm not over blending it. I want to have some sharp areas. This is just like how we highlight our mountains that we paint. And just like the mountains, it's one of those things where looking up close, it might look really jaggedy and not cool.
Not cool,
but when you
bro.
stand back and look at your painting from a little bit of a distance, which you should do anyway, like when it'll be hanging on the wall if you hang it up, and people aren't going to be like inspecting it with a magnifying glass. But you can see how nice that is. It creates some fun little raised areas that would be gathering the light. Our moon is going to be right here, so think about how this spot is really going to grab the light. And if your paint down here is too wet and this isn't working, like I said, wait and do it a little bit later.
I got too many brushes in my cup.
It's pretty easy to do. And you can turn your brush and sort of blend some of it out, but I want you to not blend all of it out. Having those little sharper areas is really nice. And you can add a bit more, depending on how bright you want your moon to highlight the snow down here. I just sort of gradually add. I tend to fall into the trap of scraping it in the same place, so I'm going to make myself do it way over here. There. Just kind of blend out the edges so it doesn't look like it just sharply stops right there.
It just happened.
Okay, now I'm going to start on the swirls. Ideally, my canvas would have been a little bit more wet for this. Mine's pretty dry, but we'll see how it goes. I might have to mix some blue in the paint, but I'll try it with white first. I think actually, yes, how did I do this? I did the swirl first, just knowing the moon was going to go there, and then I added the moon later. So let's take our second largest brush, which is the number 8, if you have the red kit, which these are real value Princeton brushes. You can buy them on Amazon for, I think
you can buy them at Walmart.
I want to say it's between $10 and $15 a pack. of 4, and they're great. They last forever. Okay, so load up some white on the brush. Over here is going to be covered by the snowman, so do whatever. But I'm just going to do this little hooked curve, and then this is going to come up and go like this. And then I know my moon is going to fit right in the middle there. And don't worry too much about this area. And then one of the things I like to do is thicken up the middle. So I kept thinking in my head, I'll say this is like a banana, because it is. It's kind of a banana shape if you were to cut off the ends. And I'm not using a lot of paint. Like I said, ideally this background would still be really wet, or wet enough that this would blend in a little more. But I'm kind of creating the same idea of a hazy white by just using very little paint on the brush. The other thing is you could mix a pale blue and do it that way. So how do I, okay, I'm just going to curl this around about like that. And swirls can...
Is this a hazy swirl of winter?
It is a hazy, yes, it is. Swirls can be difficult or they can be easy. Some people are swirl people, and other people have a difficult time with it, but do better with other things. So just do your best.
What did you look at me when you said that?
I didn't. I looked up at the camera.
I was joking. They don't know that.
So remember how I said that banana shape? I'm going to also do that a little bit up here. It just kind of naturally wanted to do that. And I am just using the light blue mix. That worked good. Worked a little bit better than the white. Now I'll make one that spins off this way. I don't have a lot of space between here and the ground. You might be in the same situation. You could do one that curls up this way, but I'll just do a littler one here that kind of curls off this way.
Tonight's painting brought to you by Bailey's Irish Cream.
Yeah, Bailey's Irish Cream.
Not a sponsor.
And then you can do that sort of banana shape I talked about. See how I'm widening it out, and then it goes down to a smaller line at the end. The winds of change. This one looks kind of funny until we add the moon in there, because it feels like I want to curl it. I want to curl it further, but I'm fighting the urge. And then I do this one up here that just sort of curls in. So these are just kind of whimsical wind gusts. And I'll do the banana shape right here. Whimsical wind gusts. You can curl it in a lot further. Like this one leave, but these others, even though this one gets covered up, they do look a lot better if you curl them in kind of tight. Yeah, it looks really weird right now. What the heck are we painting? Let's put the moon on. Whenever you're ready, you can pause the video if you need. If you have something to trace, great. Like I could trace the bottom of my Starbucks cup and it would fit perfect. I'm going to go ahead and freehand it, which means I might end up with a egg-shaped or oval moon, but I'm going to do my best. And I use the thin edge of this, one of the small brushes. And I try to fit it right within here. So it might be the size of a tennis ball. It might be a little smaller, ping pong ball. Does not matter. In fact, if you are watching the video and you haven't painted this yet, instead of a moon, you could curl that curl in a little tighter and just not have a moon in there. The moon does create a nice light source for us, though, so that we can have highlights and shadows. My favorite way to fill in a moon on top of a dark background like this and have it have some craters is to use very thin paint, and I pull the paint in from the edges. So I have too much on my brush. I pull it in from the edges, letting my brush run out of paint. And see how I'm getting in here and I have really thin paint. And then I think about, okay, so the moon, the craters are giant canyons. So you think about if you were to look at the Grand Canyon from a satellite, Google Earth, you would see just a big dark
it wouldn't be Google
shape.
Earth, though. It would be Google Moon.
No, if you were to look at the Grand Canyon, yeah. So I'm going to add a little more white and just pull in from the side here. And think about these big patchy canyon areas, which you can haze over really super light so that they do have a tiny dusting of white over the top of them. Otherwise, it looks too dark and light. Like right now, the spots are a little too dark. They're close to what I need. But I'll just always keep adding white from the edges and pulling it in, letting the brush run out of paint. And I will tell you, on the original that I just showed you, I had too much white. And so I went back. This little easel's gonna fall off. I went back and I added some dark blue in and just glazed white over the top of it. So you can do that if needed. And in fact, I'll show you how to do that because I know a lot of you painting will probably end up having to do that because when I teach live classes, I teach the moons this way, and we always end up having to show people how to add the, the dark spots back in. If you want to get it totally accurate, just pull up a good old high-res photo of the moon and have a look at it. But let me fill in this side kind of solid and show you what I would do in that case. I ended up with too much white paint. That's kind of cool, actually. It looks like a moon with a shadow on the side. So what do is wash my brush, dry it off, add just the tiniest little speck of dark blue, and I sort of tap it around. And doing it this way is kind of nice because you can bring some of the craters right to the edge. So you could do a combo of both things. Now this is working great for me because my white paint is still wet, but if the white paint is fully dry and you're getting really dark patches, what you can do is glaze over it with a little bit of white. So I have just a little, and I'm using very light touch. And all of my paint's really wet right now, so if it was dry, it would probably work a little bit better. But this is something we can always keep going back to, because we don't really do anything over the moon. So like, you could work on it tomorrow if you want.
That wouldn't happen. Well, maybe it would.
So on this side, I'm losing my dark patches a little bit. So I'm going to bring big canyon. I just give it a quick rinse. You don't have to like get every last speck of color off. Then I picked up a little white. Light pressure because I don't want to push the paint around too much because that blends it. Tap some colors in. Process whenever you need. Create a snowman face on your moon. Other things we've done in the past is created like Jack Skellington's face on the moon. That's something you can look up online and replicate. His face is really easy to paint. Just basic shapes. But that works for me. I know it's not accurate. Like if I were to pull up a picture of the moon, I'd probably laugh at myself and be like, oh, what in the world? Know what the moon looks like? No. All right, I'm gonna wash the brush. I feel like that needs to dry anyways. Might go back in later and put a little more white over the top. But I'm also being kind of nitpicky on myself. So let's do dots. I think we did this. I did the snowman next because I was thinking getting the dots on there and then painting the snowman on top. You end up losing a lot of your work, so a lot of the work ends up being kind of unnecessary. So we don't need to work extra hard here. We're just gonna get the snowman on there. Let's have a look at how big he is. Okay, so it starts, this is probably about an inch, maybe a tiny bit bigger than an inch. Nice big snowball base. And that is probably the size of a large grapefruit. Then we've got a large navel orange, and then what would this be? Close to a lemon size, probably. Grapefruit, orange, lemon. We're doing
I was
citrus.
gonna say kiwi. I was gonna say it's the size of a kiwi.
So his head comes up just like here's the middle of the canvas. His head comes up probably 2 inches above the middle, but your snowman can be a different size. It could be really tall, or you could make it smaller. It doesn't matter. It's just your version of the painting. It doesn't make it wrong or anything.
That's what you think.
I'm going to draw it on with my number 8 brush, and it's real close to the side of the canvas. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find the bottom, come up about a little over an inch to an inch and a quarter. I'm going to round out because I know I come really close to the side. So let's just turn this into a giant smile. Or like we're starting to paint like a bowl or something. And once you get up in here, you can turn it into a nice full circle. I mean, it's going to be lumpy. Have you ever rolled a snowman before? They are lumpy.
They are lumpy indeed.
So what I do next is this one's going to be smaller, and I want to overlap it because if you put them one on top of each other, it looks really weird. They don't balance. They kind of rest on each other. And again, make that sort of bowl shape. This one's about the size of a big navel orange. Mine's getting up there. Getting up there in size. And the head. Same thing. Make your little bowl shape. And this is where I would take a quick look and decide if these are somewhat in proportion. They don't have to be perfectly in proportion, but if you have a really tiny head and a giant snowball base, you'll want to adjust something. This I can bring out a little bit. And let's go ahead and fill the whole thing in with our biggest brush. And we do some shading. Let's start with the base. If your background is still wet, that's a bonus. That's a nice thing. But you'll paint right over your lines. In fact, you can just paint the whole thing, but I tend to like to curve my brush strokes with the curve of the snowball. And you can really utilize the thin edge of that brush to get right up to the edges. You don't have to have sharp edges. It can be sort of hazy. This snowman's a little beefier than the other one. This one's a Giga Chad. The Giga Chad snowman.
I did my snowman a little smaller.
And you've already shaded it. And you've added clouds.
I am going all out tonight.
When do you not? When does Paul not go all out whenever he's doing the painting? Oh, so I got a little white here.
That'll be a snowflake soon.
This is a good time to show you how you could fix that if it's still wet. You can use a wet brush, and then you want to tear off a little bit of your paper towel and just dab it up. And so I have a funny little spot there, but like Paul said, I can put a snowflake over it, or I can touch it up.
Totally gonna
But
be
I
a
think
snowflake.
I'm just probably gonna say the universe wanted me to put a snowflake there. Okay, so he is way too light in color. No shading, no highlights. We are gonna fix that, and now is a great time for that. While everything's still wet, and you can use this large brush if you want for the base one, but we'll probably switch sizes once we get up into the other snowballs. So I want to make a light blue. Just use the corner of your brush, pick up some blue, tap it down, mix some white in there, and it's pretty light. Test it out. I'd make it a color that maybe feels too light for you, but test it out and you can see, yes, it shows up. So I could leave it that way. I might add just a little more blue back in it. Because the white is wet already, so it's going to mix. You can add a little red in here, so you have sort of a purple shadow. I did that on the original, and then I painted over it because it was blending into the background too much. And I think I probably had a lot more, maybe I had a little more purple on my background. I don't know. It just, when I looked at it, I was like, man, he just kind of disappears. So you can leave a little shred of the light edge or paint it back in. Just think of it like backlighting. That really helps him to stand out against the background too. Go ahead and you can use the same brush or switch down. And oops, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go over the face. In fact, maybe I'll put some shading there so I remind myself, don't go over the face. And you can curve this in to create a nice waist. Okay, so that's some basic shading. We're going to play on that a little bit. The snowman is a little bit too wet right now for what I want to do next. So we're going to move on to the background again while the snowman dries. Wash your brush and set it aside. I am going to add a little more white to the moon because I guess as either I thought it was a lot lighter or as it dried, it got darker.
Mine did that too. Did the same thing.
It got darker?
Yeah.
Magic.
Like I keep layering
So
white
just
on.
tapping white in around the canyon areas. Oh, he's got a face already. The man in the moon. He's staring back at the snowman. I actually like that. I'm going to kind of play on that. Look at that.
Like you know what you're doing.
I still feel like these spots are a little dark, so I'm going to glaze over them with just, like, you can see I have no paint on my brush. Like, it looks like there's no paint on the brush. But it is there. It's hiding, I tell you.
Glaze over like you're 4 glasses of wine in.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, in the future, we'll be able to do that.
Will we?
Yeah, because we won't have to drive.
Because we'll be too old?
No, because we'll be doing it from our garage.
Oh, right. Oh, so are you saying we're going to have some drunk painting sessions?
We might.
We can do drunk art history. Oh, that would be so funny. I love art history. We should do some art history videos for people who love art history. Some people are just not interested, but I don't know. I got really interested in it in college, so I kind of kept up with it a little bit. Because it was nice when I was teaching, when I teach live classes in this studio space, to just be able to spit facts out at people when there's like a dry time and there's no talking and everybody's way too quiet.
I used to spit facts out when we were teaching live too because I knew people were drunk and they weren't going to cross-check me. They weren't going to fact-check me and call me out.
You would just make up things.
Just make shit up.
Okay, so let's use the handle end of the brush, stamp it in your white paint, and this is where I'm going to start in the middle so that my tinier dots end up on the outside. And just float these in and around that little wave of, or swirl of wind. It's Starlink. That's what it looks like. It's the Starlink, it's the drones. That's what it's like, a Starlink satellite.
You know how you can tell the difference between snowflakes and stars in a painting?
How?
Whether they're in front of the clouds or not.
Oh, yeah. These are not necessarily snowflakes. I thought of these as kind of a little winter magic blowing in here. It's going to bring the snowman to life.
The ice sculpture one?
It's Hot Frosty. If you guys haven't watched Hot Frosty yet, you have to. What is it on Netflix? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
It's on one of the streaming services. It might actually be Hulu. and it is a. I'm not giving anything away because you'll see this in the trailer.
You are the queen of giving things away, though, so be careful.
So there's an ice sculpture that comes to life, and he's this like super
Chatty.
Chad guy. He's all muscular and yeah.
He's
You have to
actually
watch
more
it.
just like skinny than anything, though.
He's pretty thin, yeah.
He's not like buff. He's just kind of
Wiry.
ripped. 2% body fat, probably.
So it's pretty funny. It's one that we liked enough that we thought we'd put it on our we watch every year at this time of year list, which is getting very large. I'm gonna do this down here now.
We liked Merry Gentlemen as well.
Yes, that was really good. We might have talked about that. I feel like we talked
Okay,
about it.
so there's lots of these movies now that have a lot of shirtless, ripped guys. I feel like they're not catering to both sides of the plate.
What do you mean?
I mean, they're not objectifying women that way.
That's because every other movie objectifies women.
I know, I'm just kidding.
It's time for us to have a chance.
Plus, they know the demographic of who watches the movies.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Actually, I think the Married Gentlemen, like those guys were middle aged. I thought
Well,
that was
one
kind of
was.
fun.
One was older.
No, I think the main blonde guy. I think that.
Oh yeah,
actor
he's
is-
like 46 or so.
Yeah, he's not a young spring chicken. Kind of nice. See some representation.
Well, and then there was the other guy who was like 65.
Yeah.
He was in Grease too, by the way.
I think Paul is one of those that will watch a movie and he has to grab his phone and look up. Where did they see that actor before?
I think that might be.
Everything's because of ADHD.
There's a lot of truth to that.
So I do like the dots to get kind of tiny as they get to the inner curl, but that's just my own preference. So I'll like dot them off here, and then when I have just a little bit of paint left, bring them down there. But this is really cute. It's such a fun way to make something whimsical. And this time of year, everything should be whimsical. Have some fun whimsy in our lives. Might get a little tedious after a while. At least it goes pretty quick. And our snowman is having a nice little time to dry.
This is not my favorite process.
Why is that?
It's just very tedious.
I've got like none of the canvases like sit flat. Thing going on with a lot of these. I've been painting on the most amazing canvas lately, and it is from Blick, and they do run sales pretty often because the canvas can be pretty expensive. It is their premium or premier, probably premium. It has kind of a dark teal label on it.
Is it a level 2 or a level 3?
I don't know if they have it that way, Blick.
I think they do.
Anyway, it's primed beautifully, and the tooth of the canvas is not super aggressive, which I hate that when they're aggressive. I hate it so much. Which you can fix that by just gessoing over. Each canvas is usually primed when you buy it in the store, so technically already has like a coating over it. You don't need to necessarily gesso, but it is really nice to take the time and do that. The painting process is a lot more enjoyable, at least to me it is. And anyway, these Blick canvases are fantastic.
You know, Jerry Arnell used to tint his, probably still does, tint his gesso, put it on really thick, even though it's a pre-primed canvas, and then he'd come back with a real fine sanding block.
Oh yeah, I think
and
I
just
remember
very
that.
lightly, just.
You
give it
could
a-
apply it like with a palette knife or even a.
No, that's too rough. He just paints it on smooth. Like with
See, I've had trouble getting it really thick when painting it on with a brush.
well, that's because he uses what's called a hake brush.
Oh, is that one of the rubber ones?
No, the hake brush is a Japanese brush. It's real wide, but it's super soft, so it doesn't
Fancy.
pull the paint away. And a lot of it depends on what, like he adds color to the gesso too.
Very cool.
So usually like a taupey color or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is actually a really good thing to do if you're doing landscape paintings, guys.
Yeah, and then also underpainting. I've been doing oils lately, which I know I posted about that on our Facebook group page. And I underpaint with acrylic because I need it to dry fast so I can lay on the other things. So yeah, I use like a color called nickel, nickel azo gold or something like that. Anyway, okay, let's go ahead and mix up a light blue, matching this. It can be a little bit darker if you want.
Something you can do if you guys try to get into doing oil paints is you can always do like your basic painting out of acrylic and then paint oil over the acrylic, but you can't really do the other way very well.
Yeah.
You can eventually, just not.
It will. It can peel off, and it doesn't have the staying power if you paint acrylic over oil. And I know in my youth I've done it a bunch of times. Those paintings are still around somewhere. So we're gonna shade. You see how I shaded around here and kind of created just the roundness of this snowball. We can do it up here too, but the scarf covers up this part, so we don't necessarily need to do that on the upper bowl. And like I said, this blue can be a little bit darker, and we're putting it on with a little bit smaller brush. So the number 8. I mixed up a color and realized I need to make it a little bit darker. I don't want a lot of paint on the brush either, so wiping most of it off is going to be a little more helpful, a little easier on this process. So right now my brush is really dragging because I have hardly any paint on it at all. It's a little frustrating, but it's getting the shading that I need. And like I said, I left that real thin edge white. You can have yours be even thinner than mine is. The reason I did that is because he disappears into the background if you don't have just a little slice of that. And this would be like backlighting. Like the moon is coming through and lighting up this nice little back area. Okay, I'm going to come across here. Just trace where, using the thin edge of the brush, just trace across about halfway.
That back.
And then you can sort of haze that out. If you need to add a little white at any time to help you haze things out, just add the tiniest bit. Literally, the tiniest bit. It's amazing how far paint goes. You can use some of the lighter blue to help blend too, because I remember I made a batch that was a little too light. And now I'll get this one. Don't worry about going across here. If you feel like you want to do it for practice, that's what you would do. But our scarf is going to cover that anyway. Another thing you could do is you could wash your brush while this is still wet and quickly dry it off so you have a damp brush and just sort of drag, using a damp brush, drag the wet paint outward so you're not adding more paint, but you are creating a nice hazy shadow. It's not super sharp. Anytime you end up with a shadow that's a little too sharp, like see I have kind of a sharp line right there, really easy to fix with just a little tiny bit of white. You'll notice I flip-flop between white and the shading color often. Don't even wash my brush in between because I'm using such a small amount of paint that it's not going to cause any major issues to have a little bit of blue on the brush when I dip it in the white, vice versa. Okay, shading the head. And you can always use a damp brush. And if you haven't painted yet and you're planning on painting it on another date. Shading this with a little purple color is nice too. So let me show you what that would look like. Make purple with blue and red. Add a little white to it, or maybe some of this blue. And you can add that right in with the other. I love multiple tones with shading and highlights. So whatever your darkest color is, whether it's the purple or the blue, the darkest color needs to be closest to the back here. You have a rattly heater, Paul.
Yeah, it's a warehouse heater.
I bring in just a tiny bit of white. Just smooth this out a little bit. I do like it to look a little blotchy. To me, I just feel like it looks better. But if you want a smooth snowball, you can absolutely do that. Okay. We will add some white across the front here. I think I'll do that now. So this is your moonlight. That's your light source. Everything on this side is going to be in shadow. The moonlight is going to hit the edge of this big time. So I want to make sure my brush is clean and really dry. And I'm going to take a nice big, well, not huge, decent glob of white. Come along the front edge. So basically we're doing the reverse of what we did there, only with a little more paint because the white, you can just keep blending it back. Any spots on the snowman where you feel like you need more white, like maybe it got too thin through this middle section, you can add a bit more white. Just be careful because you don't want to eliminate the nice shading you did. And a lot of times if you get too much paint towards the middle, then you have to figure out where it's all going to go. That's the hard part. So you can turn your canvas if needed and use that sharp edge anywhere. What is that? A bug. A tiny little gnat that landed on my palette. Yeah, so your brightest color is going to be on this side, your darkest color on the opposite side. Okay, he's looking pretty good. Shading's a little more high contrast on this one, which I feel like I needed on this guy. So you can see he has softer shadows by comparison. But I like having a nice dark because then he doesn't get lost in the background. And I like upping the contrast a little bit. Okay. Next step. I'm thinking about snowflakes. Let's paint some snowflakes in the background. So you guys just did that on the Nutcracker painting, which those of you tuning in right now who haven't seen that, I'll show you. This is what we did a couple, how long ago? This has been 4 weeks ago?
No, it hasn't been that long.
November. So we have the snowflakes. And that's a tutorial that is available on this page. Pretty fun. I really enjoyed that painting, gotta say. Nice. So I just have 2 snowflakes in there. 6-sided. Best way to do a 6-sided snowflake. Well, the best way, you want to use your smallest brush. I'm going to dip the brush in water and put a little bead of water on my palette, and then I'll mix a little white into that. So I want it thinned out, not to where it's like super drippy, especially if you're painting on an easel. But thinned out is good for this because we're drawing, and you'll know right away if you need to add a little more paint back in if it's just not showing up very good. Best way to do a 6-sided snowflake is to paint a line an X through it. It doesn't have to be straight up and down. That first line you draw could be at an angle, but you have to put the X through it. So I'll do both of those real quick. They can be different sizes. And then you can decorate them. My favorite way, I think, is to add this little V shape at the end of each of these. And some of you guys do such good snowflakes. Marlene, I was loving yours on your nutcracker. Those were really nice and intricate. Not the easiest thing to do. I like to add little dots too. And this other one, I'll do a little different. Do like a straight line at the end of each. Got room to do another. I always say this is like the telephone pole snowflake. And maybe I'll add a nice big dot in the center. Maybe I'll add tiny dots in between. I'm just using the tip of the brush for this. These itty bitty dots. Going and going. You could fill up a whole canvas with these dots. Just keep going as you go around. Add more and more and more. Those are pretty. I like those.
Make sure you don't do any two the same.
That's right. Unless it's a knit sweater. They always have them the same. You know those Norwegian sweaters?
Yeah.
Those are cool. Great. Looking good. So go ahead and finish your snowflakes up. Grab a sip of your beverage if you're sipping.
If you ain't sipping, you may be tripping.
Weird little one-liners. Too funny. Okay, so we need to add a shadow behind the snowman because that is exactly what would happen. Moonlight cuts through, it's going to cast his shadow back in the opposite direction. And I made a kind of a medium purple tone color. Let's mix it up with our biggest brush, or you can mix it up with your middle-sized brush too. It's actually this exact color. So red, blue, and white. So you make your violet first. It can be a reddish violet or a blue-based violet. It does not matter. You just want it violet so that it's different from the rest of what's going on here. And I think I made mine a little too light, so I'm going to add some more blue and red back in. That's probably about the right color. I don't want to paint it on with this brush, though, because I think I would get way too much paint on there. I'm going to use my number 8. You use the number 8 the most in your paintings?
I use it a lot, yeah.
Yeah, me too. So
I say I use it the most, though, but I do use it a lot.
I don't want to pick up a ton of paint, but first I'm going to come under, just kind of curve under the body. And then I'm going to kind of straighten it out, and I just brush back and forth. You can make a fancier shadow, like I think Paul did. You did kind of a fancier, more shaped shadow, but it's such a tiny corner that you don't really need to take the time to do that unless you really, really want to, like if you want to practice. Like this, I could round out a little bit. And just gradually add a little more paint until you feel like you've got something good going on here. Use the thin edge of your brush, maybe a little water. And I don't love that. It's a little too boxy. So I am going to actually just bring this out a little bit. And I'm going to come in with some of this blue, which I think I have some on here. And just sort of let those two meet. And see how that blends real nicely? So I don't have that sharp, hairy edge. It was like a hairy shadow. How does something round and smooth make a hairy shadow? So they're much better. And you could even drag some of that lighter color if you have it into the shadow a little. We have built a snowman. Now we're going to give him some life. Okay, I want to, I'm just thinking, I think the next thing I do is put the scarf on. We'll make a color and mix the tree branch color, tree trunk. It's like this the tiniest little Charlie Brown tree. And use that same color for the arms and hands. But let's think about what color to make the scarf. You've got options. You could do a black scarf. You don't have to do a black hat. You could do a black scarf and a red hat if you want. You can change things up. There's no rules. My scarf is kind of a teal color, and I do like it because it kind of ties the tree in there, kind of balances everything out. Then I've got the red buttons that balance these little red Christmas balls. And I did some holly leaves on his hat.
Roll out the holly.
So the green is just yellow and blue. It's more yellow than blue. And then we will probably add the tiniest touch of white. So I'm going to scrape off a nice dab of yellow and about half that amount of blue. You'll see it turns green right away. This is kind of a avocado green, maybe. More blue to that. Adding more blue is what turns it teal. And depending on what colors you use, you might be using a slightly different blue and yellow than I have it. It'll make a slightly different green. No biggie at all. I'm going to add just a little bit of white to maybe half of this. If it's turning the color that I'm going to enjoy. And you can use one of your smaller brushes to draw the scarf on. You guys might feel more comfortable doing that because we're drawing, and drawing is a little nerve-wracking. So using a smaller brush might help you out there. Go ahead and dip it in the green. And the first thing I do is right here. In fact, I'll zoom in. Let me know if the focus goes haywire at all, but it looks like it's doing good. So right here, I'm going to think about this like a turtleneck. Okay, mine needs to be darker. It's not showing up. A blue teal scarf. Okay. Little scoop right there. And then I'm going to match it up on this side. And this, you want to draw that line. It's under the chin. And you can make a pretty thick scarf. Need that. And then these two need to match up too. So you're going to curve it to match that lower line. And he's got a turtleneck. You can fill that in. You can use this same brush or a little bit bigger brush if you want. This is a nice color. I like it. Darker and deeper than, more jewel tone than the first one on the first painting. This might need a second coat. I can see the snowballs through it a little bit, which that definitely as it dries will get a little worse. So I will need to put a second coat on it eventually. And now the scarf tails. I did the first one. I did the first one, which is the longer one here. And then I thought, wait a minute, we've got the wind blowing all over the place. So it technically would be blowing, it probably, because of the way these are, it would probably be blowing this direction. So you could put it here. That would be really cute. But I I was like, I don't want to cover up the buttons and the because I had already drawn this one in. So I was like, I don't want to cover up the buttons on the arms. So yeah, I could do it here, but because on the original it's over here, I don't want to throw everything off too much for you guys. So I'll just make this one kind of wavy. Got movement. So you want this to be as wide as this is. And this is about 1/2 inch. So just make 2 parallel lines. Go ahead and fill that in. And then we'll be able to make some fringe on the bottom. I'll show you how to do that. Definitely will be needing another coat. A winter coat. Use another winter coat. As I get down in here, I just flick, real light pressure, flick the brush outwards so you end up with kind of the fringy ends and fill that in above it. You can leave the fringe off and just have a scarf that has straight edges. Every bit as cute. And then for the second tail, I just had it kind of shot out from here. Remember, 2 parallel lines about the same width as this. Fringe. Okay, let me zoom out. Yes, so it's choppy and blotchy. It's going to need that second coat, but it has to dry first. So now I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. Mix up the tree branch color. It's a dark brown. Luckily, we're using the primary colors. So the best way I have found, a quick way to mix brown without having to go back and forth, is, I know this probably looks black on the screen, but it is a dark brown. I make orange and then I add a little black to it. So let's pick up one of our medium-sized brushes to mix. We're going to paint with our little brush, but I try to not get in the habit of mixing paint with my little brush. I know I already did it with the scarf color, but it will preserve that little brush better if you use it only for painting and not mixing. So red and orange, or red and yellow make orange.
I got a kink in my neck.
Do you really?
A little bit.
You've been bending over that painting. And then I add just the tiniest bit of black, a little at a time, to see what level. Oh, sorry, I'm off the.
What are you doing?
Off the. I told you that camera had to come.
No, it's just you're zoomed in.
Am I? I guess I am, yeah. Okay, so this is a good brown. I feel like maybe a little more yellow to mine. Just play around with it, and if it feels like it's too burgundy in color, add more yellow into it. And then I'm going to add a drop of water and stir that in the whole mix. Pick up my little brush. Dry that off. And let's plant our little Charlie Brown tree. Let me show you the original. So the Charlie Brown tree it actually kind of droops over. You can do that if you want. I just made a little tiny tree. I don't know why. I like to think about, what was I thinking? Why did I do such a tiny tree? I think it was because I like the idea of him looking down and holding his arms together. So let's, right about here, make a littlest brush. You're not going to push real hard. I'm just doing a little wavy stick. And then it's going to come out this way a little bit. If you make the ends of the twigs a little too thick, don't worry about it, because it's going to be covered with fir needles. So I like to just start with kind of a Y shape. So I'm going to make this one branch out this way. So it's like a wobbly Y.
Why?
Wobbly Y. Make it maybe a little thicker at the base where it grows out of the snow. And then from there, you can just branch up and out. These branches are going to grow, find the light. They're going to grow up and out and away from each other. Fighting for the light always. Kind of looks like a reindeer antler. So you can do twigs off of twigs, branches off of branches. And the key to this is have a little water mixed in your paint and use very light pressure. And over time, with more painting you do, you'll get used to finding out the experimenting. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? So for me, I know that if I lighten the pressure at the end of each of these branches, I get a nice thin end. And if you're not getting that and you're wondering why, it's because you just need to lighten the pressure on the ends. And it's something that comes with practice. It's not the easiest thing to do. And then eventually, the more you paint, it will just come automatically. So while we've got this color nice and fresh, let's paint some arms on our guy. Now, this is where you can make him sassy. You could do a little arm that goes out and the hand that goes out this way. Kind of like, let's see, like this sort of thing. Oops. Like he's got his hand on his hips. He's like, who put lights on that tree? But I gave him more of a kind of shy, peaceful. It's called Peace on Earth. So he's got this sort of, I'm happy with everything in the world pose going on. And the arms are kind of close together because of the way that he's holding them together. And the hands just go right below this middle ball. So what I did first is I think about, okay, my buttons are going to go right there. So I'm going to put a dot here. And from there, I will go down like that. And then the other one, you're not worrying about hands yet. The other one is going to go from here. And I'm going to cross them over. I will tell you a little secret. I had to redo the arms because I originally did them in black. And the hands and everything ended up looking so creepy. It looked like a Halloween painting. My daughter loved it, but I was like, I can't do that for this. So now I've got the hand. These are like the wrists crossing. And then you can make the fingers sort of curl in towards each other. Like they are kind of like little claws. Well, it looks like a spider. It's because I talked about it. I talked about it being creepy, so psychologically, I just made it, subconsciously, I made it Halloween creepy. I guess that's just how it's going to be. So I was just thinking, the way they're shaped, I could put a little Christmas ball in his hands. He's decorating the tree. So let me show you the original. I didn't curve the hands out so much. They're just sort of flat, and repeating the exact same thing is not always going to happen.
We're not machines here.
Well, I did patch up the original. I used white. I had to cover it black sticks, and it worked. It just took several coats. But I'm going to leave this one. And I am going to paint the red buttons now. They're real cute. You don't have to do them in red. You can pick a different color. And you can do 2 or 3. They're about the size of on this one, they're about the size of a pencil eraser, the diameter. So I did 2. This is such a better red than the one I was using at home.
What were you using at home?
I don't want to say the brand online because it's dissing the paint company. It's a brand we always use.
Oh.
But it was one of the different packages.
Gotcha.
And you know what? I could see for some paintings it could be very useful. Probably a lot of your landscapes it would be very useful.
Could be.
Okay, so the scarf is ready for a second coat, and I want to put it on before this dries because I'm lazy and I don't want to mix more. So I'm going to use my number 8 brush. I know we drew it and filled it in with our small brush, but I know that this is just a little bit wider than my number 8 brush, so it's the perfect brush. perfect brush size. And my paint's still a little too wet. So what's happening is the second coat I'm putting on is just sort of pushing the first coat around, and I'm getting these little white annoying streaks that are so frustrating. So you might end up waiting to do a second coat like I should have. But hey, we're painting live here. All right. It's funny that I said I want to do it before this dries up, because I will need to mix a little bit more green to put the pine needles on. I would do it now, but this, for some of you, this might be a little bit too wet still. So we'll put the hat on the snowman now. That will give everything some time to dry. Right. Take a look at our OG painting here. The hat is off to an angle and it's slightly curved. So we've got some slightly difficult things here rather than just painting a straight up and down hat. I'll guide you through it. You can do it, absolutely. It's a super easy shape. So let's take our smallest brush and let me zoom in. This particular black I use, which is Acrylic, it's more liquefied than other paint brands. So I don't necessarily have to add water to it. Some of you guys might be using a heavier bodied acrylic, in which case, yeah, you would want to add a little water to it, just like I'm doing right here. I didn't have to do that though. And what I want to do is first draw, this line here is going to go out at an angle, and this one's going to go at the same angle but the opposite direction. So it looks like he has two little antennae coming out. The hat is kind of whimsical in shape, like kind of Mad Hatter style. This I angled out a bit more than my original. And I want to curve this. It's skimming the top of the head, so it's in the top part of the head, going across the scalp. I want it to look like it sits down on his head, not just sitting right on top. And then I need to connect these two lines. So we've got two sets of parallel lines. These two, although they're going out, and then these two need to match. Their curve needs to match. He's got a little sailor hat on now. That's cute. Let's go ahead and fill that in. I think it will make the next part a little easier to kind of visualize. Now you could put a little button on top, like a little black dot. He could be French and be wearing a beret. The Frenchman. Do you remember Better Off Dead? She's like, French fries.
Yeah.
French dressing. I wonder why she pronounced it that way.
Because she was weird.
Now, the body of the hat needs to be not super tiny, because it should, like if you think about a top hat, if you were to put a top hat on yourself, the actual like round part, the body of the hat is about the same size as your head. He's got a giant melon, so we're not going to make it quite that big, but I do make it fairly big. Like, I don't want a tiny. And I like to make these go out. You don't have to, but I like the Mad Hatter look. And then this line up here needs to match the curve of these two. This one and this one. There we go. Whew. Okay, I'm gonna fill that in, but I'm going to use a bigger brush. Paper towel is under here somewhere. Let this dry. so that we can come back and decorate the hat. There's options for that. You can do like a poinsettia. What did you say, poinsettia? Is that how you say it?
I don't think so.
It's spelled poinsettia, but maybe the IA is silent. So here would be a good example of a top hat with a poinsettia. You could do a snowflake. You could do a ribbon, like just a colored ribbon that goes across. I did 2 holly leaves with little red berries, and so I'll show you how to do that when it's time. Right now that needs to dry. And I think I'm going to, looking at my buttons, they're dry, and well, mostly dry. They're just a tiny bit shiny, so I know they're mostly dry. I'm going to give those a second coat of red. Red is one of those colors that darker acrylic colors can be kind of transparent, and this one definitely is. So that second coat is going to just, it looks so much more opaque. Faceless snowman. Down a little bit, we can see how he's looking. This is what we are aiming for. We're getting there. We don't have a whole lot left to do. But let's go ahead and paint the pine needles on the little tiny tree. I will zoom in. Got my cell phone here. I don't want to push off the desk. There we go. So let's make a dark green color. You've got basically this color or something similar. It can be a little bit different than the scarf. The scarf is definitely more teal, so I probably will try mixing equal parts of yellow and blue and see how that goes. I'm off camera. Here's my color. Really close to this. It just has a little less blue. I'm going to add a drop of water. Now, when you mix paint, you end up with a big glob on your little brush. And there I went mixing mixing my paint with my little brush again, being lazy. I do want to just kind of pull and twist the brush and then redip just the tip of the bristles in the color. And the needles, let me show you, actually, let me zoom out again. Sorry. Show you how I would do that. So let's say this is my branch. For the needles, you're going to come through and think of it like a fern. And then you'll have one needle that's on the end. There you go. We're going to do a bunch of that on these little itty bitty branches. So it's little work, meaning you're going to have just the paint on the tip of the bristles. Not a lot of paint on there, and then light pressure. So if you think of it like you're painting little fern fronds, that's the look that we want to go for here. And your tree can be kind of sparse. It doesn't have to be a super, like, you don't have to have super thick pine needles. It's a little Charlie Brown bear tree. Even make some pine needles on the ground, but if you're going to do that, wait and do that later because we add some highlights on the ground. Very, very light pressure again. I'm just doing a little flick with the brush, and it's something that it takes practice. You can see I'm flicking outward from the branch. That's how you end up with like a sharper end to the pine needles, because if you were to like if you were to go and paint, here's my branch, if you were to paint this way, you end up with bulkier ends to these. And they just don't look quite as wispy. Flick, 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 flick. There. Got a decent little shrubby tree going. Zoom out just a little bit. because I'm gonna still be doing something to the tree, but it's actually just the snow behind or in front of the tree. We technically would have a little bit of a shadow from the trunk, and I kept it. I kept it very simple, and I wasn't loving it, but I know it might look funny without it. I don't know, maybe not. But I will paint it on because I put it on the original. And I want to use purple. It's this color. Let me zoom out. I'll zoom back in a second. It's this color. It's got to match the shadow color on there. So that was red, blue, and a tiny bit of white. You only need the tiniest amount of paint. I'm going to mix that up. So I make a dark purple, like a violet, and then add white to it. And it just needs to be close to that other color. Now, I'm going to wash my littlest brush, get all the paint off of it. And I want the smallest amount of paint on the tip of these bristles. Like you can barely see that there's a speck of paint on there. And I just sort of wiggle it back and forth in the snow. Actually, I probably should have put this at a different angle. It's okay. I'm going to rock it. And then you can make some, like the hints of some shrubby branches. And it's just the hint of a shadow. Don't have to go too crazy with it. And the nice thing is, if it ends up in a way you don't love, we actually come in with a light yellow highlight on the bottom. You can see how I painted over it because I didn't love mine.
Yellow snow, yellow snow.
Whenever we used to go play in the snow, my dad would be like, "Don't eat the yellow snow."
How did he know it was there?
Because he probably ate it himself when he was a kid.
I was going to say.
He learned the hard way.
He probably made it.
He probably did. Okay. He needs a face. Now is the time to make the face. I did the carrot nose first, and then the little rosy cheeks, which are optional. They kind of just cutify it a little bit. And I felt like since he doesn't have a mouth, having the rosy cheeks on there was a nice addition to the face. You can put a mouth on if you want. I purposely put his features down lower so that he's looking at the tree. And I'll show you how to do that. Let's mix up a nice carroty color. Yellow and red, mostly yellow. Pick up one of your middle-sized brushes to mix the color. I almost grabbed my little brush. I'm trying to teach myself to stop doing that because I end up with a lot of frayed little round brushes. My brush had some purple in it, and it is polluting that color. Doesn't look so much like it on camera, but in person it's not pretty. Let's try again. So it is always, for me, a little more yellow, red. Carrot-ish. That's pretty close. I know on the monitor, for me, it kind of looks almost peach, but it's not really. It's pretty orange. It's pretty carrot. Okay, I'll zoom in on the face. Actually, I need to show the tree too, because we are going to point this nose to the tree. Pick up your littlest brush. Oops, I flicked water in here. And go ahead and dip the tip of your bristles into your orange color. And we need to have the carrot point down. So what I'm going to do first is down just above the scarf a little bit, put a little dot. That's a nice marker point. And I'm going to draw a curved like C shape around that, because the way it's like stuck in his face, you would have this curved line. And then I'm going to go down. You might end up crossing over your scarf. That's totally fine. Okay.
Okay.
He's not really pointing exactly at the tree, but it's okay. He can have a little wonky nose. cross over the scarf a little. There we go. He's sort of looking down at the, sort of pointing at the tree. If I were to draw a little invisible line, it's like he's skimming the top of the tree. I could make the tree go taller. That's okay. I'm not going to do it, but I could. And now I'm going to make the rosy cheeks. It's a very, very pale pink, although I don't think it would be hurting anything if you made a more of a raspberry pink. You just don't want to like this color. Otherwise, it's going to look like a clown. So I'm going to do white, touch of red. Here I go, mixing with my little brush again, but I started it, so I'm just going to finish it. That's a good, nice, light baby pink. That's a good color to use. And I don't want a ton of paint on the brush, so I'll wipe it off. Zoom in. We're going to be working around the carrot a little bit. So I just do one like right over here, start in the center and kind of swirl your way out. And you can sort of dab it in if you want, or you can swirl it, doesn't matter. And then I do one over here. Now this is where you're going to get a little close to the carrot. This one can be a little smaller because it's a little further away. Like crazy eyes. He has pink eye. Look at that. We're making the pink eye snowman. And the eyes, I want him to look like he's kind of trying to look down at that tree. So for me, let me zoom out. I'll draw like an invisible line. There. And there. And then the highlights I put on these eyes, I put the highlights at the bottom. So it can end up looking more like he actually is sort of looking down at the tree. You can make big eyes or little. They're kind of close together on mine. Cute. Yeah. Looking in the general direction of the tree. I have a little bit left to do, just decor stuff. If you need a second coat on the carrot nose, you can do it in a few minutes before it dries on your palette. Thinking here, I think now is probably a good time to paint some of the light reflections on the snow. Now, with yellow, it's also more of a transparent color, so painting over something really blue, you're going to get green. So I'll tell you what I do to counter that and make a nice, soft, light reflection rather than something harsh and green. Wash your, probably your number 8 brush or your number 4 brush, whichever one you got. And we want to mix white and yellow. So that's going to give you some opacity and keep it from turning green. Let's see, I've got a little clean yellow here. So let me zoom in. So the white and yellow gives you a nice soft pastel kind of buttery yellow. I feel like I could add a little more yellow. And I don't want this much paint on my brush, so I'm going to wipe it off on my paper towel. And let me show you the original. You know, I like to reference this a lot. You can see that sort of light circle around the base of the tree, and then we have some on the snowman too, on the buttons, the eyes, and the carrot. I'll guide you through all of that. So let's take this, and you're just going to sort of wiggle your brush back and forth, thinking about, okay, the lights that we put on this tree in a few minutes is going to brighten up this whole area. And if you have branch reflections you don't like, this is a great time to paint right over them. So having the white in there is so much nicer than if I used to use plain yellow. And we'll put a little glow along the front of the bottom ball. Little glow along here. Maybe use the thin edge of your brush to get around the tree branch. And I actually have a little glow on the bottom of the scarf. I might actually add a little more yellow to that. Oops, getting off the camera here. So if you want, you can add a little more yellow to warm this glow up on the snowman reflection. Or it can be a little more yellow than how it is down here. I'm going to switch to my little brush, smallest one, and use the same color. And you can get a little shine on the buttons, although that's still wet. There. They're mostly dry. So a little curve. Little curve. Now I have kind of a big glob of paint on my little brush, and I need to do some tiny highlights on the carrot nose and the eyes. So I'm going to wipe the brush off and then redip the tip of the bristles. I've got paint all over my hands. Oh, it's on my paper towel. What? Okay. So the carrot, camera here, carrot is going to have a nice highlight on the end of it. And then the eyes, you'll just do 2 little dots down here. Dots, or they can be a little curve like the button. There. So now he really does look like he's kind of looking down. Highlights are fun and they make it so cute. We're going to do some on the hat next. And then we'll put some lights on our tree. A few more steps. What time is it? Yeah, we'll be done in just a bit. So for the highlight on the snowman hat, it's just like those of you guys who did the nutcracker. It's the same thing. But we want to use very little white paint because then it'll turn kind of grayish. You could mix a gray, but there's really no need to. If you just use very little paint, it's going to end up grayish for the highlight on the hat anyway. So this is the highlight from the moon. And I'll zoom on in again.
You are working that thing out tonight.
I am working it out. So I'm going to dip my brush in white and pick up just a little bit. That's not enough. So about like that, and then maybe brush it off on your palette so you kind of can spread it out a little bit on your brush. And just go down. You're not right at the edge, but you're just inside the edge. And you can put a little shine there. And then I put one matching here. And you can also put one that goes part way across the brim of the hat. You could go all the way across. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe I'll end it right about there. That kind of creates a nice division of the hat brim and the rest of the hat. And if it's too much, use your black, cover it back up. Start again. All right. Get some lights on this little tree. So for the lights, I just use plain old yellow. I didn't mix white with it because the yellow on its own is such a nice warm color. And that's what I wanted. We're going to use the handle of the brush, and just like we did all these other dots, we're going to do the lights the same way. So you stamp it in your yellow paint and literally just dot them all over. They can be on top of the branches. They can be on top of the pine needles. You just sort of cluster and float them around just like we did here. It's the exact same principle where they're just sort of floating around. There is a wire in there somewhere, but we don't see it. You can decide if you want a lot or a little as far as the number of lights. And as your paint has sat here, it's thickened up a little bit. So you can mix a little water with some of the paint to thin it out and then use the handle of the brush. Or if you're one of those that prefers using the tip of the bristles, you can do that too. I like it to look really sparkly, so I'm just gonna go crazy here. If you have any pine needles you don't like, you can dot some lights over. Hide them away. Very cute. While those dry, we will start working on decorating the hat. So the options I gave you, poinsettia or poinsettia flower, however you say it. I don't know what the proper way is. I haven't looked it up. I've heard a lot of people lately call it poinsettia. I'll show you how to draw that on my palette. I just destroy my palette always. I'll just draw it on top of this blue area. So you do like a leaf shape. You can actually paint a little center so that you know where to start from. And another leaf shape. They're always just kind of going out like a star. There you go, and then just fill that in. And you could put that right there on the hat or right there, wherever you want it to go. The other thing you could do is...
It is poinsettia.
Okay, here's my hat.
So we mispronounced it our whole life growing up.
Yeah, we did. Our parents taught us. Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom.
So there I drew a hat. The other thing you can do is do like a band across the hat like this. And that you can decorate with dots, you know, all kinds of fun stuff. The holly leaves are they're kind of fun to draw. I just mean that in the most sarcastic way ever. So if you don't think that, actually, I would say go for it. And if you don't like them, paint black over the, because they don't really go off the hat. The tone of this green matches the background too much, so I put it over the black. So let me zoom in there, or this is my special zoom in. So you can see I didn't really have it go off the hat. I think there's one tiny corner that does. But so if you tried them out and you didn't like the leaves, you can paint black over it once they're dry and do a poinsettia. But I'll show you how to sketch the shape of those. So the pokey little leaves that are so pretty, but man, they poke you. So they are shaped like palette. Why am I so messy? I'll just take this off. Move. So they're shaped like start like this, make a little V. And then they just sort of scoop in. You get those sharp points. And then I'll make one that like goes off in a different direction. So do that little V shape. So you're always just sort of scooping inward until you come to a point. It's like you have a triangle on both ends. And then you can fill those in with green. But we are doing it on such a tiny scale compared to what I just drew. So that can be a little stressful, but just try it out. I did my little V. It's just pointing that way. Fill it in. You can practice on a piece of paper too. Just always curve in, curve in, curve in, curve in, and then finally make it come to a point. That one was a lot better because I took it slow. And you know, I'm gonna add a third one here. It's gonna go off the hat. Boink, boink, boink. There you go. That'll help you remember it. The sound effects. Boink, boink. And then when that's dry, I'm going to put 3 little red berries right in the center. The little decorative glass balls on the tree. I have 2 because it's such a tiny tree. I do them in red, but you can paint them in any color. And I just have it like one drops down here. It's about the size of the buttons, maybe a little bit bigger. And then let's see, where's I have it one over here on my OG painting, but I don't put it right down here. I feel like I want a third because it looks like it's just wearing earrings. So I'm gonna put one way up here, and it can just be defying weights and all kinds of things. All the physics. How would it hang there? I have no idea. Magic. It's Christmas magic.
Exactly what it is.
And those need to dry just a little bit before I put a highlight on them to make them look like they're glass. I've actually got some time to just decorate my scarf. There's really only 2 steps left. The holly berries and then the highlight on the little decorations. So we're done, but I'm going to decorate the scarf. How do I want to do it? Using white. Last weekend I taught a live class of the gnome painting that's on our YouTube channel. It's called Gnome for the Holidays. And everybody decorated.
Wasn't it just Winter Gnome?
No, it was called we did it back in 2019. It was Gnome for the Holidays.
Gotcha.
I think it was 2019. Yeah. And so it was like our second or third painting we ever did. It's in the very, very, very beginning of our channel when our recordings are like so bad. But everybody decorated the hats and mittens, and it was so cute. They looked so good. I loved seeing all of them together. I needed to post the pictures I took on Bango's Facebook page. Yeah, and actually, that being said, if you are in the Portland area, Portland metro area, suburbs, we teach live paint classes in Sherwood, and you can go to vinegogh.com, VINEGOGH.com. You can see what's coming up. Tomorrow, is it tomorrow? No, Sunday. I'm teaching a holiday barn class on a wood panel. I can't remember if we ever did that one on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on there.
Okay.
Oh wait, no.
Yeah, no,
the barn
it is.
is not.
Oh, it isn't. We did the red truck, then the snowman on the wood panel, and I think we did do the barn, holiday barn. Yeah, it is on there. It's like the holiday 3-pack.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, and that is Portland, Oregon, by the way.
As opposed to Portland, Texas.
Portland, Maine. Yeah, I know there's a Portland, Texas too. That's cute. How fun. And that allowed my items I need to add to dry a little bit. Those red decorations are still a little wet, but I'm going to go ahead and put the holly berries on. I use the bristle end of the brush for this because they're so tiny. And I'll just do 1, 2, 3 little dots. Cute. Okay, let's get these highlighted. So the yellow lights are going to highlight the glass balls. So I'm going to face the highlights towards the lights. So like there would be one here, one here. My red is still wet, so it's turning kind of orange. That's okay. Not going to sweat it. And there we go. Are you just about done with yours?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to sign mine now. What color do I want to use? I'll just use dark blue. I gave myself way too much blue compared to how much I use. I'm going to put a little water with my paint for signing. And you want to just dip the tip of the bristles in because then you can get a nice thin signature. And I always just do my initials. AS. This little dot because I designed this in like 2005 and I wanted to make it look a little extra.
Extra,
There we
extra,
go.
paint all about
That
it.
is fun. Fun. Let's see how Paul did. Let me move my palette. Scooch.
Well, that caused an
Did it?
autofocus nightmare.
Because I lifted it up kind of high. Okay, so let's see what Paul did. Ta-da! Nice. I like the clouds. Cute. So what does he got going on there? What's he? Is he holding something?
He's holding a little bird.
Oh, wait, right there?
Yeah.
That's cute. I couldn't tell if that was a finger, but it's like a little chickadee.
Little Junko.
Oh, Junko. Okay.
My favorite kind of winter
Very
bird.
cute. I like the hat. Paul did a stocking cap.
It's because I was trying to do a bowler hat, and that didn't work. It's hard to do.
You know what'd be
brim.
funny? It's like a jughead hat.
That would be kind of funny.
So we have monster snowman with little guy. It's like dad and kid. But no, this is fun. This is
Oh,
kind of
my.
like what you did in one of those other paintings. we
My
did
moon's a
recently.
little janky, but
Your moon's a little oval. Oh, look, he's got like kind of a scary face. He looks like he's got a sinister smile. Like you could put some sharp teeth in there. He could look like Venom.
see, I put a smile on my snowman instead of doing blush.
Yeah, that's cute. Thanks, Marlene. I can't wait to see what yours ends up looking like. Your paintings are always so good. That's.
Did we
Yeah.
show next week's
Oh,
painting?
let me grab it. So next week on the 20th, we get to do Winter Shadows, which is such a pretty painting. I love the way Paul did the shadows on the trees, how they kind of stretch outward. And nice peachy tones mixed in with the blue. I like that.
Yeah.
Purples.
And
Lots of
purples.
purples. Yeah. So 5:30 PST, 5:30 p.m. PST, not AM. Next Friday, the 20th, we will be painting this. You guys can join in and get one more holiday or winter painting in the works, even though it's not quite winter. I think winter will be the next day.
Yeah, but it's winter time. All right, let's bring it back.
Let's bring it back.
Here we are.
Yay!
Yay!
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining in. This was fun. I love doing the whimsical paintings. Try out our website. Is it on the homepage? The suggestion link.
Yeah, it's just on
haven't
the
looked
front.
at it.
Yeah, it's just on the homepage.
PaletteKnivesout.com. Palette is PALETTE.
Yeah.
The other way is like the wood palette they ship stuff on, which is PALLET, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, check it out and
Don't
Give us
forget to
some
subscribe and
suggestions,
click the
like,
notification
subscribe.
and all that fun stuff. Yeah, you guys know the routine. We don't
yeah.
need to tell you.
Yeah. So we will end up seeing you next week, same time, same place. And try to relax with next week. I know it's getting awfully close to Christmas. And for those of you who celebrate, it's a lot of work.
Or a dad who has to go hang all the lights in the cold.
Your dad last minute shopping. Sorry, I know I'm stereotyping everybody.
I'm actually done with my shopping.
Yeah.
How do you know?
I'm just agreeing with you. Okay. I don't know.
You don't.
So, okay, well, we'll see you guys next week and enjoy all of the fun, festive things that come along with this holiday season. Bye.
Bye.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.